Welcome. In this video, we're going to be going over a very basic introduction to the mole. So let's define a mole. In the simplest way possible, a mole is an SI unit that represents large chemical properties. And an SI unit is just a standard unit of measurement, like the metric system, and it's just a way of measuring large chemical properties. So the most common comparison that every teacher in the history of teachers has used is by comparing it to a dozen. So when we say we have a dozen of something, we typically refer to having 12 of something. So if I say I have a dozen cookies, that probably means that I have 12 cookies. The term dozen, the word dozen, is a term that's used to describe a quantity. And the concept of a mole works the same way. It's just a term used to describe a quantity or a specific number of things. So here's another definition that I wrote out here at the bottom, and it's that 1 mole is equal to Avogadro's number of entities, or to be more specific, chemical entities. So from this, you may have a few questions. The first being, what's Avogadro's number? Avogadro's number has been experimentally defined as this: 6.022 times 10 to the 23. As you can see, that is a very, very large number. And the term entities is very broad, and there's good reason for that, because it can really refer to numerous things. It can refer to atoms, which is probably the most common application. So atoms. It can also refer to formula units, which is the smallest number, like the smallest ratio of ions within an ionic substance. So if you see an ionic substance, that's where formula units are often associated with. And it can even refer to molecules, right? So don't fall under the assumption that Avogadro's number only is applicable to atoms. It's really applicable to most chemical entities of this magnitude. Awesome. So another concept that we really need to look at and explore is the idea of 1 mole of one particular element being the same as a mole as another particular element. So say we have 1 mole of sodium and we have 1 mole of calcium. It is essential to note that the amount of substance in both samples, so let's imagine they're samples, are equal. That they both have 6.022 times 10 to the 23 atoms. They both have equal amounts of substance. This is very important when we look at using moles to convert from masses of one compound or one element to another. It's really important to understand that 1 mole of sodium is equal in substance to 1 mole of calcium. The same way, if I were to have maybe a dozen sodium cookies, which would taste disgusting, but a dozen calcium cookies, I have 12 cookies each. It's equal in substance. All right. Now, to understand this, let's look at a practice problem. This is a very, very simple practice problem, and in the future videos, we'll look into more complex examples once we get into molar mass and all those other concepts where we can apply all these concepts together. But for now, let's look at this practice problem, and it's how many atoms are in 0.39 moles of sodium? Okay, so let's solve this. So we have 0.39 moles of sodium. All right, and that's just a chemical symbol there. And we want to figure out how many atoms there are. All right, so remember this equation I showed you guys earlier? So there's 1 mole equals Avogadro's number, or 6.022 times 10 to the 23. That relationship can be expressed in terms of a fraction or a ratio. And when we express that relationship in terms of a fraction, we use it and we call it a conversion factor. Right? So a conversion factor is just a really fancy way of expressing a relationship, a ratio, or a fraction. So let's write this equation in terms of a fraction. So we know that 1 mole of any substance, whether it be sodium or calcium, whatever it is, 1 mole of any substance is going to equal 6.022 times 10 to the 23 atoms, right? And in this instance, we're starting with sodium. So it's applicable to sodium. So 1 mole of sodium is going to give you 6.022 times 10 to the 23 atoms of sodium. All right. So we can use this conversion factor, this overall thing here. We'll use it a lot in chemistry. It's called a conversion factor. And we can use it, conversion factor, we can use it to solve this equation here. So we can think of it as these units canceling out from the top and the bottom. And we just multiply these numbers. And what you end up getting is something along the lines of 2.35 times 10 to the 23 atoms of sodium. All right, so that was a very simple example, but in future videos, in the next couple of videos, we're going to be looking at molar mass, and we're going to be looking at converting from moles of a substance to another mole of a substance. So in those videos, we'll look into more complex examples, but in this video, we looked at a very basic introduction to the mole, what it is, a definition, and how we can convert from moles to atoms of something. Thank you for listening. Click like and subscribe, and hopefully you have a great day.